There have been some changes in the Japanese system and everything that's happening, and here to talk about it and let us know what's going on, we have Danielle Bernstein and Mary Smudgy Brown. Please take your conversations outside. I'm talking to you guys. Move it. I'll go move them.
Thank you. Oh, this is the clicker. So I guess we'll wait for everyone to clear out and begin. Thanks to those of you who are staying. My name is Mary Sumyoshi. I actually really enjoy being here because in the States, nobody can pronounce my Hungarian last name. And good try, but Sumyoshi, it's close, it's close, yeah. I appreciate that.
Mary Sumyoshi Brown.
Thank you. Well, we're here today to share a little bit about our journey, myself and Danielle. I'd like to give a bit of a background about Coast to Coast Consulting and how we got to where we are today and truly achieved a milestone accomplishment in the Japanese government with our work with them with the introduction of a new product for Japan epilepsy trials for intractable epilepsy. This is, it's been quite a journey together. I started out in cannabis in the early 2000s, started Legacy, and then moved into actually working in the true medical sector. Coast to Coast Consulting started as SMJ Consulting, and we were the first to work with naturopathic doctors and allopathic doctors in Washington State to create a true integrative medical clinic, the Ames Institute. And in this medical clinic, we had the opportunity to really look at how different cannabinoids were impacting patients. And when we looked at patients at the individual level, we could really work with them on dosing with all the different nuances that come with patient intake and cannabinoid therapy. From there, when patients would leave our clinic, we needed to have a way to be able to collect data on the efficacy of the cannabinoids they were taking, so we worked with some local companies to ask them to formulate products on our behalf. And this was not for profit, it was to make sure that, again, when they left our clinic in Washington State, we're in a recreational market, so they would have to go to the stores and buy the product. Danielle's company, Laurel Crest, was the formulators for these products. So naturally, this really kind of started our journey together. Because this was such a new concept, we started getting a lot of international patients coming through. I do have a background in Japan. It was one of my majors in college, went to school over there for a bit, and so the country is very, very near and dear to my heart. And watching patients come over and not have access once they were being treated in the States to be able to then return to the country and continue their therapy was a really big issue for us. So Danielle and I started working together. We were asking Laurel Crest to donate some products on behalf of a project we were working on. And graciously, she did. And we were able to provide the patients of Japan different cannabinoids in high doses that mimicked some of the products they were receiving in full plant extract here. So in Japan at that point, the legal regulations were 0.2% THC. So it was easy to get the products in there, but one of the issues we faced was with this donation, how are we going to get it out of the United States? So through this journey, we not only have started in the true medical sector, but then we have pivoted. So there's a lot of themes when I have come to these different panels, everything from banking to, to setting up a business entity. The recurring themes are a few things. It's pivoting. And so when people ask me about our story at Coast to Coast Consulting, first your medical, then your product development, and now your imports, exports, the reason we did that is because as you hear the analogy a lot, we're building the ship as we set it to sea. So our goal was that we're going to plug those holes as that ship has been sailing and to learn from what we know in the past has happened in the United States, in other countries, Germany, Australia, and really see how we can take that and shape Japan. I will continue forth. So that's a little bit about Coast to Coast Consulting. Our mission has been really, again, to guide this process from beginning to end, from procurement to importation to compliant regulation, all the way to sales and distribution in Japan. So the CBD market in Japan is very ripe. One of the issues, again, is they have a lack of supply, and it's not, at the time of 0.2%, because people weren't producing it, they just were not able to get it into the country. And if they were getting it in there, they were doing it in illegal manners. So for us, in the clinical sector, it was a big concern for us because in Japan, laws can be changed on a dime. And so if someone is bringing in legal product illegally, that can disrupt the entire market, both clinically and for their quote-unquote recreational sector with CBD. So one of the things that really helped us become successful was understanding the barriers to entry. So this isn't just specific to Japan. This is in any country if you're looking to bring your brand. There's the language barrier, pretty obvious. There are the regulatory compliance. What's regulated in your country can be vastly different in another country. So as soon as that product crosses overseas, it changes category of where it is. So understanding that, kind of the nuances of that is very important. Lack of dedicated QMS system. So I'll talk about that a little further in the presentation. A lot of companies have internal QMS systems, but for what we found, there was nothing that actually translated over into international business. And so we created one of those along the way, and I'll talk about that and have a little slideshow here in just a few minutes. So monetary transactions, we just saw the banking panel. It's a very, very big challenge to be able to accept payment in Japan and then get transfers over here. A lot of companies will go down the path of wanting to supply for Japan, but then they go through the entire process and then it comes time to actually make the purchase and they realize that Japan banks won't release money to the US banks. So what we did, we established an entity in Japan, established the first compliant bank account. It hasn't made it much easier to transfer funds, but we are kicking the can down the road to make sure that we're setting the stage for new companies to come in. So shipping and logistics, as I just spoke about, that is another component that is really important to pay attention to. Outdated business practices. I mean, you can also call them old-fashioned. In Japan, the business practices and technology is vastly different. There is still one-on-one meetings that have to happen. Bankers will come to your home and your place of business to validate your business. The fax machine is huge in Japan. Nothing is done online, signing. So companies that want to enter need to understand that you're not going to change their way of doing business, and it's just really important to accept that and do what you can to be in compliance in order to be successful. And then misunderstanding of cultural business norms. Japan has a very specific way of doing business. And so again, if brands want to expand into Japan, an adoption has to happen. And the keys to success, these sound really, really simple, but start with a purpose. And the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about our purpose with this project. Building authentic relationships. I heard someone else on a panel say, get on a plane, go over, meet your constituents or your clients or your buyers face to face, because the trust factor in Japan is huge and absolutely necessary. Set clear goals, demonstrate flexibility. That's that pivot. And follow through. Japan is very, very big on your word. So if you say you're going to do something, that was what will give you the most credibility, is actually following through. And sometimes that's expensive. Danielle can tell you that. And then celebrate the small wins. As in anything, it's very important to keep morale up when you're looking at entering into a new country like Japan. So for us, our project was the Japan project, JRCT. So for us, it started with the patient advocacy. I told you a little bit about SMJ Consulting. We were working with patients that, again, were coming over to the United States, and we did a lot of donated time online working with these patients, telling them how to use the compounds that they had available in the Japan market. Sometimes they were legal, sometimes they weren't. So that's where that trust factor comes in. Going to Japan, presenting, educating. I mean, I know you all have heard the word education 10 times over in these panels, but it's also about the type of education you do. So you can educate doctors in one voice, but educating patients in another voice is absolutely essential. So knowing your audience. For us, it was about being the vessel to communicate in Japanese with bilingual people in our company, but that didn't only speak Japanese and English, but also spoke the language of cannabinoids, because you all know that's a language in and of itself, and it doesn't always translate. Education. So beyond just sharing research, sharing data, a lot of doctors don't understand the research that's been done in cannabinoids. So really giving them a hands-on approach, and that's what Danielle was graciously willing to do for us when our doctor, Takumi Ichiro, who is a famous neurosurgeon in Japan, who is leading the trial project, was interested in doing, was coming to the United States, visiting cannabis shops, visiting the company that would be formulating this product. And actually having the hands-on approach. And you can see we're meeting with multiple doctors, some very famous ones there, just to gain ideas and receive that information for future product development. So in doing so, we actually had the opportunity to work directly with the Japan Ministry of Health. I work with the Japan Trial Task Force over in Japan, and we had patients that were using a product before the legalization shift that had below 0.2% THC, but it was still above the current threshold. In October, the law changed, and in December, it was implemented. So when Japan changes their law, it's extremely rapid. And at that time, we were working with Laurel Crest, and Laurel Crest had to pivot as well to try to get down to 1 part per million. If you do any type of manufacturing, you understand how difficult that is. Additionally, you have Japan companies who only want 2, 3, 4 kilos, and it's very expensive to shift your entire manufacturing process to produce that. So being able to work together, we convinced the government that these patients still deserved access to this product with higher amounts of THC than above the legal threshold. Not only did they allow us to continue to provide for patients, but they gave Coast to Coast Consulting the direct authorization for the first time in history to have a product imported to Japan, purchased by the government with above allowable levels of THC. Now, in the United States, we're only allowed to export 0.3%. So they are interested in working with European countries that are allowed to export higher levels of THC for future trials, such as oncology and neurology. So again, really understanding the nuances of the Japanese government, how they implement their laws, and what would require, what is required from someone trying to present a product is really where our forte is, and working directly with the government. So in all of this, you know, we've discussed procurement, production. I'm going to go into the QMS system here in a minute, but it's always about thinking ahead to your final goal. And the final goal is the distribution to not only the patients, but the community of Japan, the CBD community, because they're struggling right now. And they're very interested in products. And a lot of companies want to do the right thing for them, and they think they're doing the right thing for them, but the details of monitoring the COAs and not having them modified, you know, once they get through customs, and the practices of batch testing and initial batch, and then just repeating the process. Japan has to have a COA that's very specific on every single batch that passes. What might get through customs is not what is allowable that it to be sold in the market, and is also sometimes not what is desirable. So Japan came out with their laws, you know, 10 parts per million for isolate, 1 part per million for vapes, below 1 part per million for any type of beverage or a liquid. Their liquid is not oil. Their oil is not what we categorize as oil. So again, understanding the nuances of all of this and keeping track in the COAs is something that we really struggled with. So when I say hundreds and hundreds of emails, it's not an exaggeration, and I think Danielle can absolutely validate that, just on getting it right so that it could be read correctly to the Japanese receiver. So we started, it's not working anymore. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Oh, I don't know what just happened here. Here we go. All right, thank you very much. So we worked very closely with C15 Solutions to create a custom quality management system that was able to take all of the data that companies use internally and then convert it into the exportation-importation process very specific to Japan. Again, one of the issues is when any of these companies would deliver their COAs to Japan, there would be emails. I heard someone else say from another country, on a panel, if you have a product that's in compliance, send me an email. Well, in that email, things can get misconstrued. It's not protected. So let's see. Okay, this works. So Coast to Coast Consulting partnered with C15 Solutions, and they are they're a technology partner, and I'm going to have to read this because this is not my forte. I just asked them to build it, and they did it. But they work with so many CPG packaging companies. They began in pharmaceutical and then started working with a lot of the big cannabinoid companies. So when I came to them with this project, they said two things. It's very new, and we're happy to tackle it with you. And this company has been phenomenal in kind of taking what's in my brain and in our struggles that we've gone through and really creating a system that acts as a registry for the Japan Ministry of Health. Okay, I'm hopeful this is going to play when I hit this because I asked the developer to give a 3-minute little presentation on this because he could do it much better than I can.
Hello. Daryl Grayson from C15 Solutions here. I've had the pleasure of working with Mary and the Coast to Coast team to build this program I am pleased to highlight for you all today. C15 delivers a purpose-built electronic quality management system tailored to the unique needs of the global cannabis industry. C15 empowers cultivators, processors, and manufacturers to strengthen product quality, safety, and consistency while reducing the overall cost of compliance. The program I'm pleased to introduce today has been specifically designed to support, enhance, and simplify the export process for partners to Japan, ensuring consistency and dependability for all stakeholders. As part of this program, all documentation for partners exporting to Japan will be managed and stored in a specific C15 vault managed by Coast to Coast Consulting and reviewed and approved by the Japanese Ministry of Health. Partners are also strongly encouraged to maintain their own vaults for full management of their own internal quality programs. These vaults can be securely connected, enabling seamless collaboration while preserving autonomy and control. For each intended shipment, Coast to Coast will generate a digital binder containing required documentation for the corresponding partner. Coast to Coast will initiate structured workflows with tasks and guidance to support partners in uploading and completing the necessary documentation with specific due dates. Access to content is tightly controlled. Documents are only visible to partners through explicit permissions, either manually or via predefined security rules. Version control ensures that only the correct and approved versions are accessible during review and submission. Each profile accessing the vault has the ability to assign its own locale and language to ensure that all participants can easily access and navigate through the platform. All records are stored indefinitely within the vault, supporting long-term traceability and data retention. All documents are tagged to the applicable project, clinical trial, and partner, among other tagging for easy grouping and accessibility. Automated audit trails track all document changes, providing transparency for both Coast to Coast and regulators like the Japanese Ministry of Health. Vaults are fully compliant with 21 CFR Part 11, EU Annex 11, and ERS requirements, ensuring readiness for regulatory inspections and audits. Documents like COAs, when reviewed, can be sent back for revisions and fixes. In the case of recurring or systemic issues, the system enables the identification of corrective and preventative actions to be communicated to partners, ensuring not just immediate resolution, but long-term quality improvements. All these functions ensure a closed-loop system and data integrity, which is why the Japan Clinical Trial Task Force are recommending the use of this system for this program. This wraps up the demo. I'll turn it back to Mary to continue the discussion, answer any questions you may have, including how you can contact us. Thank you very much for your time.
So I would think.
Hello.
Gerald. Okay, here we go. So the importance, I won't go too deep into it again, I'll give you some examples. You saw kind of an empty vault, obviously, for privacy reasons, but with just some examples in there. So this allows companies to upload their COA. If there's any modifications that need to be done, it can kick it right to the lab for the laboratory to be able to make those modifications and to be tracked in here. The importance of this system is that when ready and released to the government can then approve the product to come in with pre-authorization. And once the product is on the shelves in Japan, as they go in to often, check on compliance or do raids, they can look in this system and understand that the buyers of the products have been purchased from a manufacturer that has gone through all of the steps. This is easily integratable into QMS systems that manufacturers might already have, but also something that C15 can build out specifically for your type of client. So again, I won't go into too much, but this is kind of the process flow. You have the US or any other hemp company that would like to engage in Japan, uploads the documents. When they have the upload, they're very secure in the vault. And I'm going to let you just kind of take a look and read at the flow, but the end user will also have access so that they are able to display to the government that these products have been verified. The other very specific thing about this program is that there's a trademark stamp inside. So once a product has been approved by the Japan Ministry of Health, and again, this is applicable to any other country, it's assigned a special code that is you can't transfer it. And all of the products have barcodes on them. So when a customer is in the store, they're scanning it and they can know that they're buying a product. The government can scan it and know that it all comes back to what they are able to see and hear. So again, this was our way of plugging that hole of all of the issues we saw in Japan, COAs that came with different names, different numbers on them, but it was clearly a batch from one manufacturer. So credibility and authentication is the key here. So again, what the vault does as well is it collects information on companies so you can see if a company has consistent COAs. Obviously, one user would not be able to see the others, but the Japan ministry can get in and look at who the reputable companies are. So if you're interested in doing it and doing it right, this will put your company at the top of the list for Japan when they're looking for new companies to provide products for trials or allowance into the open market there. Production scale, a lot of our issues will get emails, when is it coming, when has it been shipped? So everything is held in here in each vault. No matter what technology you have, understanding and respecting culture and the human side of doing business is extremely important in international business. Again, which is why we're, very appreciative to be able to work with Laurel Crest, who is interested in that as well. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Danielle to talk a little bit about Laurel Crest's involvement in this journey and what they're doing in the global market.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Laurel Crest is an ingredient manufacturer based in Oregon. We make cannabinoid ingredients and terpenes and custom blends for things like the tincture that is now being used in a clinical trial by the Japanese government. I think that I will speak just like generally about this process of getting into Japan, which was it was originally a donation to patients, so it was a patient first, like the origin was really patient first and making sure people had access to therapeutic cannabinoids. And so that's really at the heart of the Laurel Crest mission in general, is opening up new markets and maintaining all of the different compliance and regulatory necessities, even though it's self-regulated in the United States, to ensure confidence in your consumer. In Japan, I feel like that was a really huge hurdle for us as a manufacturer, but also as a sales team. The education piece and trying to figure out why people wanted the cannabinoids they wanted, and also what they were doing with them. And so we initially made this donation. We worked with a group to import like hundreds of kilos of different CBD and then tincture fills into the country, and then nothing happened for like 3 years. So it was a really long, it was like first mover advantage was the idea, and then nothing, like absolutely nothing happened. And in between, there was a lot of people importing things into, a lot of other companies importing things into Japan that were not sanctioned by the government. They were illegal products, and they were intended to get people high. So you created this distrust of manufacturers, of the companies that were doing that were making a ton of money. I mean, like insane, the amount people were buying kilos for. And we were watching from a distance until eventually the government then, I mean, I think that was really the impetus for them to completely shut down to 1 part per million, which then impacted patients. And so then Laurel Crest also like spent, you know, we did import a bunch of stuff with you that then was stuck in the country at not 1 part per million. So I'm just trying to highlight like the actual experience has been like extremely problematic along the way, and with everything that we learn and like what's actually happening in the Japanese market, and being in Japan for certain amounts of time has been super important to really understand how what Laurel Crest has to do as a manufacturer and sales and marketing company to continue to gain the trust of the buyers there in the market, because they don't really trust anybody. I mean, I think that still to this day there's a lack of trust, because also culturally, like the implication for them having something that's over 1 part per million in their stores is they go to jail. So sitting in America, which is like a completely insane free fall where people don't feel like there's any rules and there's no way to actually there's no accountability really, because even if a rule is made, there's not any real like funding or ability to enforce that rule. So like we're over here in America and this is what's happening, and the impact, if you're just going into the market to make money and you don't really understand the impact, if you're like forging a COA, is that someone goes to jail for that, and it can ruin a family. You know, I mean, I don't think.
And I want to say, oh, absolutely, and it's happened. You know, I know on the last panel, she was saying in Thailand, you know, there's no raids happening, and they're not sending people to jail. They absolutely are in Japan. And you know, and it's very scary. Like that's the human side of understanding who you're impacting, and you know, making the big buck on a couple kilos going over, fine for short term, but it's not sustainable for manufacturers either. And I think that's the important thing to really realize is that you're not going to stay in business.
So currently we're manufacturing 1 part per million isolates. We've had this opportunity to provide the first full spectrum tincture formulation for epilepsy trials, or this compassionate trial, to continue to get medicine to people who need it in Japan, which is a huge honor, and like very excited about that. And the impact on Laurel Crest is that unlike a lot of the international markets that we have gone into, this has been extremely expensive and very slow. And I still believe that there is a huge upside to continuing to get different countries, and I think not just that, like in Asia, you know, THC is very stigmatized, but just different countries comfortable with the idea of access for therapeutic benefit. And in Japan, that's like the only pathway. I mean, unless you are somehow illegally getting something into a vape that gets you high, which is what actually everyone wants, but it's just not it's not like a legitimate way to consume these cannabinoids at the moment.
I kind of want to piggyback on that. So a lot of people want that feeling of euphoria in Japan, but what the general public is used to in terms of euphoria is very different than what we are used to here. So even a small amount of THC is good for them. And one thing that I really appreciate about Laurel Crest is when we came to them and said, you know, listen, we have a brand that wants to come into Japan. So Coast to Coast Consulting is representing 7 Leaves, and 7 Leaves is a very well-known cannabis brand, has done nothing with THC, and they wanted to go into Japan. So we had the conversation conversation about creating a new product, but also having to change your brand to match the Japanese lifestyle. So they're very, they're very into kakui lifestyle, like very cool, but still CBD with high CBG or CBC is something that Laurel Crest was willing to help make in a vape product for them. And so it really is backing responsible use, right?
And getting people also as close to what they want as possible is important, just because you want brands to succeed, because that's how we expand into these different markets. But I think it's really around, building confidence. And in that particular market, there is a ton of education and a lot of confidence to build back. And so how, from a manufacturing standpoint, that has played out is being willing to also like open your doors and be very transparent with the doctors and customers and inviting people into your space and saying like, this is where your products are made. It's GMP. It's, has all of the regulatory things that you need to be confident that we're doing also our best, because we've also never looked at our products we've never scrutinized our products so heavily for 1 part per million THC. So we're also not getting it right every single time. There's batches that fail, or there's something that we think is definitely like we have a line of terpenes called Loud Exotics, and one of the blends, one of the cannabis flavors passes at 1 part per million and another one doesn't. And you're like, well, we don't really know why. It's like, is it our process did actually pull some cannabinoids over to the terpene and we don't really realize it because we've just never looked at them that carefully. So I think it's also been a huge learning. I mean, at the beginning, I don't think any manufacturer thought that they could hit 1 part per million in the raw ingredient. You can dilute down to that pretty easily with tinctures, but the raw ingredient was it was a challenge.
Well, and another challenge that we faced was the testing labs in the United States. So the testing labs use different standards. Their reporting is different from lab to lab. So being able to communicate what was needed for Japan, when like Laurel Crest or another company would submit a test result, they click Japan compliance. Well, again, Japan compliance is very different. D8 is very from D9, and they combine the two to reach 1 part per million. And if it just meets below LOQ, then the Japanese government automatically applies that it's, close to 1 part per million at, 0.9 parts per million. So it's all of these, understanding what you're facing going into it and being prepared for that ahead of time. I think Laurel Crest has paved the way, because when we were doing this together, something would come back and we'd say, oh, now that's a new regulation that they impart. And the Japanese government, they are very involved, and I don't know how it is over here in Germany or in other places of Europe, but they actually listen to the constituents. And so when the constituents or the buyers, however you want to categorize them, the people give them information to a certain extent. If they like that information, you're going to wake up the next morning and there's going to be a law in place about it. So knowing that, going into the Japanese market, there is constant pivoting. You've got to keep up to speed. And again, that's what Coast to Coast Consulting does. We kind of filter all of that coming through. And because we're heavily involved with them, we know what they're going to be looking at. I'll give an example. CBC is a highly effective cannabinoid for pain, and does not produce the euphoric effect of THC. And so a lot of companies in Japan were looking for CBC. Well, something happened and the government outlawed CBC. You can have it in a product, but you can't ship over an isolate. And Laurel Crest had been working on getting CBC down to 1 part per million. So it was kind of like an abrupt stop.
We couldn't do it.
Yeah. So again, this is the expectations, and I assume that everyone in here is interested in the international market. But it's a push. It's definitely doable. It just takes that dedication, resources, and honoring of all the finite details that comes with expansion into Japan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too, we're sitting in Europe and we're like Laurel Crest is manufacturing in the US and we're talking about Japan. But I mean, Asia in general, where there is a lot more stigma around cannabis and cannabinoids, patients still need access to them. So it's like, how do we work together as an international community of advocates and manufacturers and consumers to, have a responsible message as well for those countries that the people still want the plant. We do have 5 minutes, so if there's any questions, I'm happy to.
Let's hear it again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Not good for short people.
Questions? I have a question.
Okay.
Is there a recreational? How's the underground market in Japan? How's the underground market in Japan? That's always my question.
There is definitely an underground market in Japan, for sure. For sure. Yep.
Is it pretty good? Do you have a favorite weedle?
No.
Well, I think that
Okinawa, you go down there, you're
that
gonna
this
get it.
definitely crushed some of the underground market. I mean, most people are making their money on the underground market. And
But
so,
in terms of, are you talking about like actual plant, flower?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if I was in Tokyo for a couple days and I needed, something to keep the hands from shaking.
Sure. You could find it. It's not as easy because, I mean, if you speak the language, you can find it definitely. If you don't.
I look like somebody who would buy weed.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure
Absolutely.
my haircut's an international cannabis passport.
Okinawa or Harajuku, you'll find someone with a T-shirt
Harajuku,
that
Okinawa.
says "smoke weed." Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Just look for the guy in the smoke weed.
I mean, literally, there's a guy that stands there and he's got the T-shirt on. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, who wants to go with me? No. All right. Are there more questions?
None? Well, thank you guys for coming
Apparently,
today.
they're all fully educated. Let's hear it again
thank you.
Thank you.
for Mary and Danielle. This is great, man. This is the international. Oh yeah, stand up. Let my man take a picture. It's the International Cannabis Business Conference, Berlin 2025.